Hi there, and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman.
And I'm Paris Schutz. Here's what we're looking at. The FDA approves an overdose reversing drug for over-the-counter use.
What Chicago business leaders across the city would like to see from their next mayor.
He'll actually retire with a teacher pension despite the fact that he's only been a teacher for 4 years.
And we're going to retire you in 3 days.
Tempers flare in the race for mayor. Our Spotlight Politics team counts us down to Election Day.
And you've probably noticed the sounds of your morning commute, but have you ever thought about them as art?
Now to some of today's top stories. Chicago's Roman Catholic leader is joining the chorus offering prayers and well wishes to Pope Francis. Cardinal Blaise Cupich is asking for prayers for the ailing worldwide leader of the church. Francis was hospitalized earlier today in Rome for symptoms related to a respiratory infection. The Vatican has said the Pope has had difficulty breathing, does not have COVID-19, and is expected to be in the hospital for a few days.
The future of the former Michael Reese Hospital site in Bronzeville is finally getting clearer. City leaders broke ground today on a $3.8 billion mixed-use lakefront development.
That's new, walkable, vibrant places. That's wide sidewalks. That's bike lanes. That's gathering spaces. It's all the things that when you connect the dot in a community between housing that you need and the streets that you need, and all those pieces and parts is what stitches it together and makes it thrive.
The city sold the 48-acre lot to a multi-development partner, Grit, to develop up to 7 million square feet of office space, mixed-income residences, new roadways, and parks. That includes over 5,000 residential units, 20% of which would be affordable housing, plus rehabilitation of the Singer Pavilion, retail and office space, and a 40,000-square-foot community center. Officials say the project will come online in phases with expected completion in 2035.
The days are longer. The weather is a complete toss-up. It must mean opening day is at hand. In fact, it's tomorrow, and the denizens and establishments of Wrigleyville are preparing for Cubs opening day Thursday afternoon, 1:20 p.m. when they take on the Milwaukee Brewers. Forecast right now is calling for a clear day and a high of 50. Not bad as opening days go. Meanwhile, the Sox play at 6 tomorrow evening against the Astros down in Houston.
And Chicago food lovers, some of your favorite restaurants are up for a coveted James Beard Award, often called the Oscars of the restaurant world. The James Beard Foundation announced the finalists today. Among Chicago's contenders are French restaurant Obélix for Best New Restaurant, Chef de Cuisine Damar Brown of Virtue for Emerging Chef, and Sepia for Outstanding Hospitality. Now, in a bit of an upset, only 2 Chicago chefs are up for Best Chef Great Lakes. They are Diana Davila of Mitokaya and Torheria in Logan Square, and Tim Flores and Jeannie Kwan of Kasama in East Ukrainian Village. In years past, all 5 finalists were Chicagoans. The Beard Awards will be presented in June at the Lyric Opera House.
Now the other cities are
catching
catching
up.
up.
Stuff. I know they're gaining on us. Don't worry, Chicago. We'll still have plenty of places to eat.
And I have to try all of those because I've never been to any.
Obviously, we have to try all of them.
And coming up in the program, what local business leaders are searching for in the next mayor.
But first, over-the-counter medication for opioid overdoses. It's right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
The anti-overdose drug Narcan will soon be available over the counter at pharmacies thanks to the Food and Drug Administration's approval. This means people who are taking opioids and are overdosing or likely to overdose will have a much easier time getting their hands on a drug that can stop it. And joining us is Eric McIntosh, nurse practitioner at Rush University Medical Center. He also does work with the Heroin and Opioid West Side Task Force. Eric McIntosh, welcome to Chicago Tonight.
Thank you.
So what is the ultimate impact of this over-the-counter designation?
Sure. I think first and foremost, it's going to provide access. At least since 2022, Narcan has been available without a prescription, but a lot of states have had regulations and rules put in place that really hamstringed a person from being able to access Narcan. It was behind the counter, and so you had to go to a pharmacist to ask for it, and many of the states required additional education and certification for pharmacists to be able to hand it out to people. Now that it's over the counter, that means that it's going to be in the general area, accessible to all. And so access is really the biggest thing that we're going to get from this.
And of course, people struggling with opioid addiction, sometimes they don't have access to a whole lot of money. Do we know the price point and where this is going to be available?
You know, unfortunately not right now. That I think we'll see as this gets rolled out. I think the biggest hurdle that we've gotten through so far is actually getting it out there into the general public. I think next is going to be affordability.
On the other side, you might have folks saying the widespread availability of this might prohibit people from strategies to try and get off of opioids, that Narcan isn't such a good thing. What's your response to that?
Yeah, so this is all part of the risk-harm reduction model that we use. And Narcan is a tool that really isn't, I wouldn't say, necessarily used by people who have opioid dependence, but it's really a tool for the loved ones to give them the power and the ability to save their loved one who has opioid addiction that may be overdosing. That's really who it belongs with.
It's a matter of life and death. In a few seconds we have left, you had a personal experience. I mean, you're on the West Side Opioid Task Force, but on the Blue Line, I read that an overdose was happening and you had to step in.
Yeah, so I take the Blue Line every day into work, and that really has become my extended community. And a woman that I had recognized for several years on the Blue Line, she had overdosed. And we stopped the train. I called out if anybody had Narcan. No one did. I asked the CTA operator, did she have Narcan? And she said, even if I did, I couldn't use it. And so 10 minutes went by as this woman's, heart rate went down, breaths went down, her level of consciousness went down, and if I had Narcan readily available, she wouldn't have come so close to being so ill.
So she did survive then, you're saying?
That I don't know. I can tell you I haven't seen her since.
Okay, all right. Well, that it sort of illustrates the life and death component of this. Eric McIntosh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And up next, what local business leaders hope to see from their next mayor, so please stay with us. The Chicago business community has been battered a bit over the past few years, from COVID closures to high loop vacancy rates to fleeing corporate headquarters. Both Paul Vallis and Brandon Johnson agree that public safety weighs heavily in the conversation about Chicago's business future.
What the city has to do, just not downtown and Michigan Avenue, but also the commercial corridors on the south side, the commercial corridors on the west side, is the following things. First of all, public safety. Because right now when I talk to the business groups and the business associations, public safety is the dominant issue.
Look, it's not a one-trick pony here. You have to create a safe environment for people to want to actually do business in the city of Chicago, and you also have to incentivize the type of businesses that have not had an opportunity to be here.
Joining us to give us the view from the business community are Jack Lavin, President and CEO of the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce, Felicia Slayton-Young, Executive Director and co-founder of the Greater Englewood Chamber of Commerce, Elliot Richardson, co-founder and President of the Small Business Advocacy Council, and Nilda Esparza, Executive Director of the Logan Square Chamber of Commerce. We welcome all of you here in person to our table this evening. Felicia Slayton-Young, if public safety and business are intertwined here, as the candidates are saying, what are the public safety policies that the next mayor has to pursue to make the business climate better?
There's a lot of things to think about. We're going to start first with the issue of our young people and making sure that they have some safe spaces to be. You know, it'd be nice to have something that was exclusively for teens. We got to think about jobs. That's workforce development. It's not enough to just train people, but really finding jobs that are meaningful and that really promotes a thriving wage. I think that's really prevailing. And I think we just really need to really figure out this policing system. How do we bring community that works really well with police, and that it's a uniform and unified way of making sure that there is some equity in how we look at what we want to see in the communities for our kids, our businesses. As long as safety will continue to prevail, it makes it very hard to attract the kinds of businesses we want to see on the corridor.
And I think we might have consent on it here. Jack Lavin, let's talk about the Loop, downtown Magnificent Mile. Vacancy rates have been hovering around 20 to 25% for several years now. What specific policies need to be enacted to drive that down?
Well, one thing, Paris, I think first thing to do is make sure that the CTA is safe. A lot of people coming downtown are taking the CTA. We got to get people back in the office, and the CTA is not safe.
And not reliable right now.
And
either.
not reliable. And we got to do that. And we can't, I know we're talking about public safety, but also taxes. We've had skyrocketing property taxes. We have one of the candidates proposing a lot of new taxes. But you have companies, as you said, vacancy rates are high. They're coming out of the pandemic, the lingering effects of that, skyrocketing property taxes, public safety. They can't afford we can't afford to have more taxes. We have to address the public safety so that businesses can get their people back to work and get the economy rolling again, get more jobs going. Bottom line is, if we defund the police and raise taxes by almost $1 billion, it's going to hurt jobs. It's not going to help the Mag Mile. One of the taxes is the hotel tax. Tourism and hospitality is a huge part of our economy, and if we raise the hotel tax, we're already one of the highest in the country. It lowers tourism, it lowers leisure travelers, conventions that want to come to town, and business meetings.
And your group has endorsed Paul Valls for that reason. Brandon Johnson has proposed $800 million in some of these different taxes that you're talking about here. Nilda Esparza, you're here on behalf of Logan Square. What's the view from a community like Logan Square, where the business is booming pretty well, but what policies can help foster a climate where folks can expand their businesses, open new businesses in a place like Logan Square?
Well, I think our operators, what they've been telling us is they want a mayor that truly understands the importance of building relationships between the economic development arena and community empowerment. That's when you really are going to get thriving corridors and communities. I think what's happening now is across the board, our operators want to see investments, not just in the southwest sides, but I'm sorry, guys, I am so nervous.
South and west sides, not just the south and west sides, but all over the city. No problem at all, Nilda. Elliot Richardson, what about small business in general?
Yeah.
What's the view from the small business community?
Look, small businesses, Paris, have really had a difficult time during the pandemic, and they're struggling to recover. And they're struggling to recover throughout the city, whether it's the north side, the west side, or the south side. One thing we need the new mayor to do is to lead the charge to cut red tape, reduce the costs and the expenses of starting a new business for entrepreneurs, of moving into a neighborhood business district, because we got to revitalize those neighborhood business districts.
What are some of the red tape issues that need to be cut?
I mean, getting a permit, right? Getting a business license, it takes far too long. It's far too expensive. Zoning, to get a special use permit to bring an innovative new business into a commercial corridor, you have to do all sorts of things. You have to come up with site plans. You have to go through these very arduous notice requirements. You have to bring in an expert, sometimes a real estate expert or somebody like that. And businesses don't have thousands of dollars that are trying to open up, to pay these fees, to spend this time to put up their shingle and open their business. What happens is people don't want to take the chance. They don't want to come into neighborhoods. They don't want to risk signing a lease and not being able to open, Paris. We need to tackle this. We need a mayor that can work with the alders and can work with the city departments and make this process smoother, less expensive, and quicker.
I was going to say, it sounds like you need to appeal to some city council members as well here, as they have a lot of say in a lot of these issues. Felicia Slayton-Young, what about that? Do there need to be, does the road need to be smoother for small businesses in Englewood, let's say?
Absolutely. Let's go back to the red tape. It's the thing that keeps businesses from not opening or finding other spaces in suburbs to open, because the process of opening a business is less arduous, right? The red tape, the cost, and and for many, once they finally get open, the enormous amount of fines and fees. And so if this is going to be the consistent basis that a very small business in a post-pandemic economy has to continue to deal with, then they're not going to find doing business in the city of Chicago the place that they want to be.
And I know in Englewood there was some uproar when the Whole Foods closed, but I don't think you want the community to just rely on those giant companies. You want the small local businesses. Jack Lavin, you mentioned you're not a fan of some of the taxes that Brandon Johnson is proposing, but I think we have to level with folks given the pension situation, given the debt situation in the city. Revenue might have to be raised in some capacity. So what's a better way to do that?
Well, I think you need to balance. You have to have fiscal stability. Businesses like fiscal stability. So you have to balance a budget. So the new mayor has to be able to balance the budget, has to address the unfunded pensions. We have a fiscal cliff coming up for public transit, $760 million. So before we start proposing taxes for new programs, we need to address some of the issues we have. Funding cliff for public transit, unfunded pension liabilities. These are all issues that we need to address before we start building new programs, not to mention making sure public safety reaches that, putting police on the CTA, things that are going to help businesses grow. And on the red tape, you know, we had 12 cranes or something up before. Now we have less than a handful. We've got to get the perception of Chicago as a good place to do business, welcome companies here. A head tax, for example, that's a tax on hiring someone. So we tell businesses, you're going to get taxed for hiring someone. That's not a good thing to sell when we're telling people, come to Chicago, but we're going to charge you to hire somebody.
Right, the head tax, one of the things that Brandon Johnson's proposed. Nilda, as far as when you look at these two candidates, do any of their business platforms appeal to the Logan Square Chamber of Commerce more than the other?
Well, I think that both candidates have a fervor for the job. And I think that for us, when I spoke to our business operators, they are looking for a mayor that is tackling the root of the problems. And I think that a lot of what's been presented are almost unrealistic initiatives.
That's a good point. I mean, there are a lot of promises that are being made, but yes, can many of them be delivered on? It's a campaign. We've seen it before. All right, we are out of time. We could talk about this all night. Jack Lavin, Felicia Slayton-Young, Elliot Richardson, Nilda Esparza. Up next, our Spotlight Politics team counts down to Election Day.
The Chicago mayoral election is 6 days away, and the candidates are getting testy. That and an update from the ComEd bribery trial in tonight's Spotlight Politics. Joining us, of course, is the Spotlight Politics team, Amanda Vinicky, Heather Sharon, and Paris Schutz. So, first off tonight, polling shows that the race for mayor is tied. Last night's CBS WVON debate got pretty rough.
The fact that he's being dismissive of a black man who taught for 4 years in Chicago Public Schools is you got to stop doing that, Paul.
I'm criticizing his leadership ability and his lack of management competency. That's what I'm questioning, not his 4 years as a teacher. When he retires,
then don't bring it up.
Well, he'll actually retire with a teacher pension, despite the fact that he's only been a teacher for 4 years.
And we're going to retire you in 3 days.
Ouch, Heather. Is this race about experience or race or both?
All of the above. So when it's this close, the candidates are scrapping for any possible advantage, and it is to Vallis's advantage, he thinks, to look like he's the calm, sort of experienced person in the race, but it also helps Johnson to say, I'm the politics of new, and that, you know, we're not going to sort of go back to a city where it is, you know, a city with a huge African-American population run primarily by white people. Race is certainly an issue in this race, and we're going to hear more about it in the next 6 days.
But I have
race
to say,
in the race.
I don't think it's like Harold Washington, Bernie Epton, in that both these candidates can claim legitimately, you know, diverse coalitions of supporters, black, white, Hispanic, in both cases.
Fair point. We know also FOP President John Catanzara says there will be, quote, blood in the street if Johnson is elected. Paris, what's he talking about?
Well, it's another unfortunate comment in a series of unfortunate comments from the FOP leader. But basically what he is alleging is that if Brandon Johnson is elected mayor, then police officers are going to leave the force en masse, and the crime situation in Chicago, according to Catanzara, will get worse, as opposed to his preferred candidate, Vallis, who has said that he's going to hire back several police officers, and the ones that are there now will want to stay. And Heather has done an analysis. There's really no evidence to support either one at this point. There's no data that suggests that there's going to be some mass exodus of police officers if one candidate is elected, and certainly no data suggests that a bunch of officers are just going to come back if another one is.
Vallis did denounce those comments, but I think it is something that is nonetheless hurting his campaign at the same time as it's helping, because he is, quote unquote, the law and order candidate, and there have been very confusing messages from Johnson, including at that latest debate where he was pressed. Did you make those comments about defunding the police? He didn't want to say it, but then he said also that he is not going to cut any money from the police.
Obviously,
so there's some cross strategy there.
It's a double-edged sword when you get the FOP
most
endorsement,
certainly,
because you want the rank and file behind you, but Vallis has had to say, but I'm not with John Catanzara, the leader. It's the rank and file I care about.
Which is harder because Catanzara was just reelected relatively easily by that rank and file.
Okay, so Alderman George Cardenas was at a Paul Vallis rally and claims Johnson supporters are engaging in some dirty tricks.
They loaded up the absentees. They got names from all these people that usually don't vote. They made them sign a document. They got the ballot at the House, and then they mailed it back, or they took it and dropped it off. Terrible. If you let them cheat, they're going to win, and that's not acceptable. Are you going to let them cheat? No.
And I should clarify, former alderman. But Heather, what now? What is he talking about?
So in the first round of voting, Johnson supporters were more likely to vote by mail than Vallis supporters. And in fact, we saw Vallis lose about 3 percentage points from election night to when all of the votes were counted. So there is no small concern among Vallis supporters that Johnson's edge in this very close race will come from mail-in ballots. And that's what you heard Cardenas reacting to there. Now, I asked him about those remarks, which really echo false statements from Republicans about problems with mail-in ballots that are truly false, and there is no evidence that voting by mail is any less safe or more likely to be fraudulent. He said he was trying to rev up the crowd and get Vallis supporters to vote. He did not respond to sort of my questions about whether that's appropriate, given that we live in a time where Republicans are engaging in election denialism and that there are real questions about election integrity.
Any notion of cheating is a dangerous one to go to unless there is actual proof of cheating, which there is not.
Right, and in that video, Paul Vallis is standing just off camera. I did not get a response from his campaign today about whether he thought those remarks were appropriate or accurate.
Given 2020 vibes, though, isn't it?
It is.
All right, so I want to get to the ComEd 4 trial. Prosecution star witness, former ComEd Vice President Fidel Marquez, said that he fielded constant job requests for people pushed by former House Speaker Michael Madigan, who's working on legislation for the utility. Amanda, the defense says that this is just good old-fashioned patronage, which may have been true back in the day when Madigan started 50 years ago, but have the rules of the game changed over time?
Maybe. I mean, bribery has always been illegal, if that is what this was. If it was giving jobs in exchange for Madigan's blessing and advancing of legislation and laws that ended up benefiting ComEd and Exelon's bottom line literally by billions. So bribery is illegal, always has been. Yes, however, I do think the rules of the game changed. They're also interesting. I mean, Madigan was supposed to be this guy who played it so safe. And yet, in hearing some of these conversations, it doesn't seem all that careful. Again, not making any aspersions as to what the way the jury will go, but some fairly blatant asks, requests, and pandering that is part of these conversations that were surreptitiously recorded. Really interesting to watch, including one of them, Madigan's bestie, McLean, having some slices of pizza at this Springfield restaurant that was known to be Madigan's favorite. If you do go to Saputo's, I guess, I don't know. Watch out, but I recommend the pizza with sausage, with meatballs. Pardon me.
A lot more of the baked than the mostaccioli.
And test the pizza.
There we go.
It's journalism, people. It's very important for our jobs. All right, that is Spotlight Politics. Amanda, Heather, Paris. Thanks, everybody. Up next, the sounds of your commute reimagined as art. But first, a look at the weather. Rachel Steele likes to keep her ears open. As a person with epilepsy who can't get a driver's license, moving to a public transit-heavy city like Chicago made it much easier for her to get around. And she quickly realized the sounds of the city helped tell its story. She developed a piece of audio art called Remixing Transit, and now she's paired it with 3 new visual elements to help expand on the themes of her work. We visited her earlier today during an installation.
If we take some time to take out our earphones, we can have some moments of mindfulness and recognize the different diversity and things that are around us. And maybe you might hear something that really surprises you. So I kind of had this idea of, what if I created a sonic interpretation of a commute, where you could just close your eyes, be in one place, and be able to be transported through different spaces and time.
The physical pieces in Steele's installation complement the ideas in her audio work, what it's like getting around a segregated city, how coming and going to different destinations forces us to reorient ourselves, social struggles, both past and present. And with an eye toward climate change, she focused on found and used materials.
It's remixing materials, it's remixing sound, and we can just repurpose them in another way that can find meaning and value.
The event, Soundpost Remixing Transit, is open just one night, tomorrow at 5:30 at the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. There's more information on our website.
That's our show for this Wednesday night. Please join us tomorrow night live at 10. Now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Paris Schutz.
And I'm Brandis Friedman. Thanks for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that's proud to serve its community through pro bono legal services.
Next time on The Coroner, her job is to determine cause of death. But for Jane Kennedy, staying out of the way just isn't her style.
I didn't say that!
No, there's a lot you don't say.
The acclaimed mystery series, The Coroner.
Thursday at 8:30 on WTTW.
Tonight's about Joni.
Join an all-star tribute to legendary artist Joni Mitchell, recipient of the Library of Congress Gershwin Prize for Popular Song.
Kind of thrilling.
Featuring a surprise performance by Joni Mitchell.
Friday at 8 on
There are monuments throughout this country that you have to preserve.
Is designed to show how iconic symbols have played an important part in our country's history.
We grow up and we see things and we make connections, but oftentimes we don't really know the backstory.
The history of the game is right here.
The Red Sox committed the original sin of baseball. They traded Babe Ruth. They don't win a World Series for 86 years.
The Hollywood sign is such an iconic landmark. It represents dreams. It represents glamour.
This series does a wonderful job of really diving underneath and telling how they came about.
The Gadsden flag can serve multiple purposes for different groups. I thought that no better place would exist to educate Americans about our iconic symbols than PBS. They have a real love and interest in American history.
Chicago, the Mecca, the hub of gospel activity.
This is a very serious problem. Don't make it funny.
Like something out of hell. It's just unbelievable.
They were losing men almost every week. They knew these kids.
The story of meatpacking in Chicago is the story of American capitalism.
I think your questions are both insulting and stupid. Excuse me.
Whoever thought of flying on a plane is a friendly thing?
He isn't making ads the most money ever had.